Costello, who has interviewed her, says Gardaí have tried to use her material to build a case against Lisa.
They issued a warrant for my recordings and they want to use them in a case against Lisa. But obviously, I'm a journalist, so I'm not going to testify against her because that's not my responsibility.
That's it for now. All news updates are on our website. That's newstalk.com.
Newstalk weather.
Thanks to the AA. You can find our lowest car insurance price online, guaranteed.
Dry and very cold tonight with clear skies and light winds, widespread sharp to severe frost, a risk of icy patches and fog inland with overnight lows of 0 to -4 degrees. Now you're up to date on Newstalk.
Off the ball. This is Newstalk.
And welcome back. So very latest goings on. I'll give you the latest in the GAA. Full times across the country in the club championship. Up in Ulster, a semi-final. Derry and Elliott Fermanagh beaten by Kilcoo of Down. It was 9 points to Kilcoo's 1-8. So they'll play Naomh Conaill of Donegal in the final. In Munster, the semi-finals on as well in the football. Milltown Malbay of Clare were up against Clonmel Commercials of Tipperary. And Clonmel beat Milltown Malbay by 2 points, 9 points to 7. Elsewhere, emphatic for Nemo Rangers of Cork beating Austin Stacks of Kerry 2-17 to 5 points. And then in the hurling, Leinster Club Senior Hurling Championship semi-final, St Mullins of Carlow were against Rathdowney Errol of Laois, and it's St Mullins 2-17 who go through against Rathdowney Errol's 1-19 of Laois. That is the latest in the GAA. I'll run you through the rugby in a moment. Just in the last hour, we were going through memories of 10 years ago and Thierry Henry and all that business. We have David Sneyd in studio. Hello.
How's it going? Evening.
Very well. I was just saying to you, I'm thoroughly done with this. I'm not that interested, but I was just bullied into doing this during the week, so we did it.
Right.
And there's a lot of memories coming in from people all the same, so it was a hit. People like looking back. If Robbie Keane had done the same, we would have got over it pretty quickly. We are the masters of hypocrisy, says Michael. Probably true.
Yeah, it's true.
We look back on Damien Duff's dive against Spain in 2002 with a fondness, I would think, at this stage. No? Somebody says, if there was ever an argument for VAR, it was that Henry moment. I thought Henry was a you-know-what after the way he tried to be pally with Ireland. Richard Dunn, I would have told him where to go myself. Brian Dublin. I presume it was the Henry goal and maybe the Lampard ball over the line against Germany which accelerated things. And TC in Dublin, I presume it's not Terry Connor, but he is over. I was down the other end of the ground. I thought, no way is that a free. And he says, knew he'd done something wrong though when he managed to square it. Phone goes into meltdown from lads at home. No WhatsApp groups. Had about 50 furious texts in 2 minutes. Sickening. Yeah, one of those days. I was in the crowd with my brother, just as a fan, and I saw it perfectly. Yeah. As I was saying there. Where were you at home?
Oh, where was I? I was at home actually. I remember I had just moved to England actually. I was living in Manchester. I'd come home. I did the first leg, did player ratings for the first leg of the game for the Irish Mail, and watched it at home with my dad. And I think it's actually one of the last games I got to watch, say at home or not. Well, kind of big game, yeah, not working or even with my dad, but yeah, and fuming like it was just, and you felt sick, and it was afterwards. It was a strange one in the sense of you can actually get over what he did in terms of the handball because it's in a match and. You kind of you'd do it yourself. Any player who said like you would if you're
100%.
Yeah. So what was the most? And I think Richard Dunn was even talking about it this week was like on going over and just sitting beside him and then saying, "Yeah, I handled it." And Dunn's like, "Well, I said that 25 minutes ago, mate." You know, that's what nags and it's just that kind of that. Like, I think actually sometimes you kind of forget the memory plays tricks on you. That didn't cost us because it still went to extra time. So like
it was in extra time.
Sorry, it went. But like. I don't know, you just feel like haven't been to a World Cup, you got it where you're sort of thinking, will we ever get to a World Cup again? Like, you know what I mean? Doesn't look like at the moment.
Gary Breen's with us. Gary, good to talk to you again. How you doing?
Very well. How are you guys?
Yeah, good. So 10 years ago and all that.
Yeah, God, it was incredible that it is 10 years. I remember watching at home in Kent. I had family over from Cork that week visiting, so we had a full house watching the game, and the disappointment was massive. It really was, and. It's so surreal, really, remembering it and those iconic pictures of Dunny sitting down with Henry, and you know, Dunny's one of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet. And I don't know, Mick McCarthy said he would have took the head off of Henry, but it's done and dusted at that stage. That would have changed nothing.
Yeah, I think Richard Dunn was talking during the week, and he was almost saying one, you're too tired to because you just played 120 minutes. And he's like,
Yeah.
everyone's saying that. If I had taken the head off Henry, the whole world would have said, well, you can't do that. So he was in a no-win position, really. So we're building up to tomorrow. Huge anticipation, obviously. Mick McCarthy, Gary was saying, he's a knot in his stomach already. It's a complete cup final feel to this whole thing. And the more you look at this game, the more you look at the fact that under this manager, Denmark have only lost 2 games, one of them being a World Cup penalty shootout and the other being when they were on strike and it was a bunch of non-league teams playing. So he's never lost a game effectively in normal time. The more you look at this, really, as much of a cup final feel to this whole event tomorrow is probably Ireland's best chance. Atmosphere, everybody up for it. That kind of it's that kind of an occasion you feel.
Yeah, very much so. And although you can't help but admire the form of that Denmark team, they're by no stretch of the imagination a great team. I have no doubts that with the stadium jumping, our lads trying to produce something better than what we've seen, I believe we're more than capable of it. I genuinely do. And I really believe that they're terrified. I know we keep saying it, and it probably shows where we are, that our biggest threat is from set pieces. But I genuinely believe that this Danish team are terrified of Duffy at set pieces. They really are. You can literally feel it as you're watching it. And I feel that they'll overcompensate on Duffy. I think the likes of Egan, the other guys will get space. I think we will cause them problems at that. But it's a massive opportunity. There's a surreal feeling as such because there is still a negative vibe around Mick McCarthy, despite the fact that we can effectively win a game tomorrow and have automatic qualification for a major final. We haven't had that since Big Jack. So it is such a strange time. And the very fact that that kind of dual appointment, which is a strange one, I still can't get my head around it as such. But nevertheless, take away all those negatives that have come out and slowly seeped out after the early momentum that Mick had built, changed with some really poor performances. But just thinking on the positive, these lads have an opportunity now tomorrow to fulfil their boyhood dreams, to fulfil our dreams as fans watching. And there's an opportunity now to play in a major finals where some of our most iconic Irish footballers haven't. Some of our World Cup stars as well and Euro stars haven't been able to do it on home soil. This is an amazing opportunity.
Mm. Yeah, Gary, it's an interesting one you said there about the negativity, because that's something that Mick has really spoken about over the last while. And I'm not 100% sure where it's really coming from, because
I know where it's coming from. It's solely on the back that Stephen Kenny is going to be taken over. I genuinely believe that. I believe that the fact that, and you're right, I think Mick McCarthy, for all his experience, I think it has affected him a little bit. Because if you remember after the Georgia and Swiss poor performances, I remember him saying something along the lines of, well, listen, this team, I'm getting the best out of them. Let's not forget what they're like under O'Neill. That's the first time I can ever remember Mick McCarthy not really backing his players 100%. I think that the kind of negativity that he felt was building got to him in that one moment. I don't think I've ever heard it before, having captained these teams for Ireland, Sunderland, Wolves. I don't think I'll ever hear it again. And I think he will regret that, because that's not him. You heard about him talking about he loves this group of players. He's delighted with them. And that's more in keeping with what he is about as a manager, developing that camaraderie, that real togetherness. And I think ultimately that type of rhetoric, when people are saying there's not really been an upturn since Mick took over for Martin O'Neill, is absolute nonsense. Yeah, because that's it. Because it's been so much better in terms of organisation, togetherness, everything. So much better. But we're under no illusions. Mick didn't have to really say that, because we don't need telling that this is not our strongest group ever. And I don't think that those lads, who an honest bunch that they are, they don't need telling either. Yeah. They're under no illusions, but this is a great opportunity. Yeah, because even throughout this whole campaign, I think the last couple of games maybe have sapped a little bit of the momentum out of things. Like Georgia away was very poor, and we are chatting earlier, you can it's not the sort of performance you want at this stage of a campaign. Ideally you'd like to be on an upward trajectory and the results going well, but Glenn Whelan was out at Abbottstown today, and Glenn Whelan just kind of, it was an off-the-cuff remark, but he kind of just said no one would have expected us to even be here after the Nations League. And that's it. In fairness to McCarthy, to even be here, it's an unimaginable success, because the players would have been at such a low level. The confidence from supporters and all the rest of it was such a low level, for the worst it's been for a while. I can't remember it ever being so David,
negative.
listen, I agree 100% with you. That squad was on its knees. Make no mistake about that. And that connection that you never felt was ever vulnerable between the team and the supporters was at its lowest ebb. It really was. And so to do what he did, well, listen, I'm not surprised he did it, and he's more than capable of doing it. But I just think that there's a big agenda. There's a lot of people who are kind of billing Stephen Kenny as a saviour of Irish football. He's not that. He's not that. He's got a lot to prove still. Of course he is, and we hope he is proved to be a great success. But don't underestimate the role that Mick McCarthy has played. And that's not me as Mick's man, because I think people will say that, oh, you are Mick's man. I'm not. My priority is Ireland, and if Mick hadn't done a good job, I'd be the first to say it.
And that's very interesting that you interpret the slight slip on Mick's part, because again, it's players first, as just maybe his sense of the Stephen Kenny imminent arrival pressure, and also maybe the pressure of the campaign not going perfectly, which it never would. But that's interesting that he's feeling that as experienced as he is.
That's my take on it, Joe, without a shadow of a doubt. And I would have spoken to a couple of other lads who I played with, and they made a point about it as well. And I can't remember, to be fair. I should have remembered exactly when it was. I don't know if it was in a press conference post-match or whether or not it was to the written press. But it immediately made me think, whoa, I've never, ever heard that before from Mick. And it was a slip. It was nothing more than that. I genuinely believe that, because I don't believe for one moment that he looks at that group and thinks negatively about them. I think he really does like them. I think he loves Duffy. I think the very fact that he's captain. I think he loves Keogh. He's brought him back into the squad to give him a little bit of a boost. And I think that he loves all that squad. I genuinely believe.
That was a nice touch, wasn't it?
Joe, it's Mick McCarthy. This is what he's about. It's those little things that build that kind of spirit within the camp. That's what he's so good at. And this is something that slightly gets overlooked at times. That people skills, because he's gruff, isn't he? He's bullish in press conference, and you think, oh, he's a bit narky, him, isn't he? But he's not like that. He genuinely is not. He thinks the world of his players. He really does. And I think if there was, listen, I'm not being facetious here, but I think if there was a WhatsApp group messages now, I think it would be very complimentary about Mick McCarthy.
And it was his idea as well. He said it today. It was him. He was the one who kind of extended the invite, and Duffy, because obviously Shane Duffy and Glenn Whelan were speaking earlier, and Duffy even made the point as well. It was like just nice to actually see him around, and kind of gave players a different bit of a perspective. And he was talking about obviously what he's going through at the moment, and I think the players were able to kind of react to that, and it seemed to have gone down well as well. And
not to imbue it with any kind of cynicism, I don't mean to, but in terms of building the spirit, it also lets the other players know, well, if you're going through a tough time, equally I would bring you in. It's not just about Keogh, it's about that sense of group. We have a clip from the press conference this morning, Gary. I mean, it's just typical Mick in, complete control of the whole situation, really. I know you mentioned the gruffness at times in the press conference. I always feel it's underlined with a slight wry grin, as if to say, this is all nonsense anyway, really. It's never too gruff for my liking. But I do like this Danish journalist who kind of just summed up how they see us. So here's a clip from this morning.
It's often said that the Danish players are better technical than the Irish. What do you think about that? Do you agree?
Often said by whom?
By the Danes.
Well, I don't know. Well, that might tell you something then, eh? Self-praise is no praise, I'm afraid.
So you will not bring your thoughts about that?
I'm not bothered. If I sat here and said I was better than everybody else, you wouldn't believe me, would you? So, I don't... It doesn't concern me, that. People's opinions don't concern me. Because it's on the day. Yeah, you can be better for all the time round. I've seen a lot of cup finals. I know. I was a big Leeds fan as a kid. I remember watching that one against Sunderland, and it was an absolute shoo-in. Sunderland couldn't win. Guess what? It did. And all the games subsequently that I've seen or been involved in, when teams shouldn't win, they've got better players. They've got a better squad, they've got a better manager, everything's in their favour, and they get slapped. Well, that's what I'm hoping will happen tomorrow.
The fact that we've played Denmark so often, is there an added edge going into this game?
In what way do you mean an edge? An edge of what?
I guess just the fact, obviously there's so much at stake. I guess, is there slightly more at stake just because it's Denmark again? Well, can I tell you how I'm feeling today? Is that I've said to you already that not's there today, so I would hope that, well, not hope, it will be with the players and that. Getting ready for that game, I can't imagine that if there's any game that's a competitive game,
There should always be an edge there, and there'll be a bit more, I'm sure. It doesn't. I don't know whether he plays. I'm not involved in these 5-6 games that's been with Denmark, so I just want to win the game. It won't matter to me that it's Denmark or it's anybody else.
No, I wouldn't think it would. Who says that? The Danes, generally. We all say it. So, Gary, you mentioned set pieces, and let's chalk that up as a real pro for Ireland. Based on the games that you've seen previously and on what you've seen from Mick, in general play, are we to presume that after that first 5-6 minutes, you know, bump and buster and keep the crowd involved, when this game settles down a little bit, give us the general pattern that you're expecting?
Well, I'm actually hoping for a massive improvement in terms of our ball retention, because ultimately, well, we've been dreadful over 2 or 3 seasons, to be perfectly honest. But I think there's mitigating circumstances in terms of that. I think the setup in central midfield has to be right. I don't want to see a one of Glenn Whelan and 2 advanced midfielders. I want to see 2 holding midfielders, ultimately to protect that 10 area, to look after Eriksson, but more importantly, to cope with those wide guys, Braithwaite, Pulse, and coming off the wings and playing in pockets either side of Glenn Whelan. Now, listen, I've said this before. At 35, he couldn't cover the ground at 25, let alone 35. And there's a knock-on effect as well. Shane Duffy has a massive responsibility as one of the star performers of our team for the last couple of seasons. Added with the captain's armband, he has got to condense that area and keep our defensive line high, because they haven't got centre forwards who can run away from us. But at times, that kind of safety of dropping deep on the edge of our box just creates that big space in that central midfield area, and we struggle. This is the problem. So there's knock-on effects of it, of course. You don't keep the ball, you're not really a goal threat because you don't give players good service. I think David McGoldrick coming back in at centre forward will be a massive boost in terms of that. He can look after that, he can drop in, receive balls on the half turn. But other people who are probably in the team to look after the ball. And it's a problem that we've had throughout the team. Seamus Coleman, one of our shining stars, has been guilty of giving the ball away far too often in this campaign. So it is a collective problem that has to be addressed tomorrow. It really does, because if we keep giving that ball back to them, we're going to struggle. There's no doubt about that. And I think we need to keep that ball, keep the team, keep them pinned back, keep the supporters on top of us in terms of driving us forward. And I think if we do that, I think it'll be a very difficult evening for the Danes.
Feels like a big if, I must say, not to be the negative one here, but it feels like a big if that we would change the habit of several years. Yeah,
it kind of, even today, Mick said it himself, that just they haven't kept the ball well enough, and it's just been the story of Ireland for the last number of years.
But you know,
decades, really.
You know, and
go on, Gary. Yeah.
Go on.
Sorry, David, Joe, sorry to interrupt there, but we can be better at it. It's not about an inability. If you think about that Georgia game, the very fact that Conor Hourihane and his desperation to get forward, and Jeff Hendricks on the other side, that they were ahead of the game too often. They weren't getting there to influence it going forward. And as a result, then, the Georgians were just running through our midfield. So ultimately, it's just about starting positions slightly deeper, more experienced players saying, listen, just stay off the game a little bit. And also those midfielders drop into like full-back positions to give easy passes to our centre-halves. If their opposition midfielder don't follow them, then the likes of John Egan can step in and break lines with these passes. We've seen him doing it in the Premier League. He's so good at it. So there are reasons, and there's no doubt in my mind, absolutely no doubt in my mind, that they're being coached to do this on the training ground. But it's up to them. You can't hold these players' hands. They've got to do it themselves.
And that's one of the things that is so frustrating, because, like, it's so, not that it's simple, but like it should be the easy thing for a professional footballer, and you would have been doing it, is get the ball, receive it, make an angle, pass and move. It's basically the premise, should be the premise of all game, pass and move. But you're saying there, Gary, about having maybe two central midfielders, and maybe one of those players obviously being disciplined. Hourihane, maybe his natural instinct would be to try and get forward because he has such a good left foot and influence the game further up. Like, with Josh Cullen, I know it was only New Zealand, but like, even, and it was only a friendly as well, Bulgaria before that, but Josh Cullen has so much energy in terms of covering ground and reading the game. Like, I don't know if it's too big of a game to throw someone in like that for his competitive debut, but someone like Josh Cullen you would think is tailor-made to be able to basically do even more donkey work for Glenn Whelan and have that energy, but also the discipline you're talking about to make sure that the lad, like the likes of, say, Braithwaite, Poulsen and even Eriksson, don't get basically the freedom of the Aviva tomorrow.
It's just, what it is, David, ultimately with Cullen, what you're getting is someone who can look after the ball. I've seen a lot of him playing for Charlton, and he's so comfortable, doesn't give it away cheaply. And the step up is massive, of course it is. But if Mick McCarthy believes that he's able to do it, he'll put them in there. There's no doubt about that. But in terms of having that defensive quality, it's not about like crunching Roy Keane tackles. It's just ultimately stay in that position and collecting those players. They'll come to you. And then invariably, when they realise you're standing in the pockets they want to get into, they'll have to stay wide. They don't influence the game then as much. And this is just what you're looking at. And I agree with you. I think Harahan's got a wonderful left foot. And his progression under Mick McCarthy has been great to see. It really has that personality coming out, that that determination to say, no, I take the set pieces ahead of Brady. We relied on Brady so long just for the set pieces. It seemed like he was a specialist player, not really contributing throughout the game, but just the set pieces. So he had all that. And that's why I was so disappointed with his performance in Georgia, because I understood it. I understood exactly what he's trying to do in his desperation to really have an impact in and around getting forward, supporting our forwards. But he just got caught in no man's land. He was neither here nor there, and that was the problem. And I think at times our more experienced players just need to say to him, listen, for a couple of minutes, just sit in, stay behind the game and come onto it and show us your quality that way.
And Gary,
we could hear those messages coming from Mick, but the players need to have it.
Yeah, I know, and I suspect we may be in the post-mortem bringing up this issue again. But what two would you have then? Who would you have alongside Whelan?
Well, listen, it's a difficult one. I mean, I think we always say about Jeff Hendricks. I think ultimately, when I in the build-up to this game over the last couple of months, I was really, really paying attention to the fact that James McCarthy was building his minutes for Crystal Palace. I know he'd only started one game in the win at West Ham, but he was building up his minutes, 10, 15 minutes here. And I know, like, I don't want to go over old ground again, but I felt that he could possibly give us a big difference. But again, that 3-year exile that we haven't seen him for continues. So I think you need to brush that aside. But I think the players who have played are capable of doing it. I have no doubt about that. I've been really impressed with Brown's energy in terms of what he's doing at Preston. I think he gives you a little bit of that. But I think Mick will literally look at it and say, well, listen, in terms of what we're going to try and achieve in different periods of this game, ultimately one, putting them under pressure early on, getting a foothold in the game, then who can keep that ball as we progress closer to that that first half, and then who can win it for us late on. I think the squad will be used. I think we probably looked at that New Zealand game and felt no one really jumped out of those friendlies in a way that Duffy had done a couple of seasons ago, the way that Egan had done. But I still think a lot of those players could play a role.
I think it's going to be just very, in terms of the pattern of the game, it's going to just be very similar to like the Swiss game, where there'll be that blood and thunder at the start, kind of get the crowd on side. If we can get an early goal, fantastic. It happened before, but
like the 5-1 game.
Yeah.
Right.
But then what you're hoping, it's so much is going to fall on David McGoldrick. Like, he is going to be so important, because we're talking there about midfield. Like, the game is probably going to bypass Ireland's midfield tomorrow. Yeah. Like, as much as I hate it, we're talking there about it, like, unless something dramatic happens and suddenly the players are an awful lot braver and are finding it's just going to bypass it. And that's why McGoldrick, and getting fellas in and around McGoldrick and having that energy around them.
I think that's the reality. I agree too. I think for all our aspirations and for all, and I accept, if Gary says that's how Mick's operating in the training ground, I fully accept it. But in reality, it'll be bank of 4, bank of 5, and ball occasionally will go up to McGoldrick's feet, we hope. And then it's up to him to buy time and bring players into the game. And that's the reality tomorrow.
That's it. Like, if he's not at it tomorrow, and there's so much pressure on him in that sense, because if he's not on it, the ball is just going to come back constantly.
But his technique is reliable. Like, you expect him to be on it. Yeah. I'd be shocked if balls Gary go up to David McGoldrick and he's miscontrolling them. I've never seen him not really on it when it comes to those kind of things.
No, he's played well for us. He's been a massive boost, of course he has, and he's impressed at Sheffield United in the Premier League this season. They struggled with goals, but they do as a team. But he's so important to them as he is to us. But I don't necessarily agree with that our midfield will be bypassed, because I think they'll have a lot of defensive work to do. And I also believe that this Danish midfield don't have the athleticism of the Swiss midfield. I think the Swiss are far superior. I like Delaney. I like he's combative. He's not like an Irish player by nature. Lasse Schöne, good, technically gifted, but they do not have the athleticism of that Swiss midfield in terms of breaking from deep, running past our midfielders. So I think we can stay with them. And even in that press conference when they're talking about the Danes being technically gifted, and listen, I can't see Mick McCarthy mentioning that for one moment. I think if you think, listen, I'm always reluctant to go back in history, but even when we famously beat the Dutch in what was a massive game with McAteer's goal, that Dutch team had a star-studded squad. It was never mentioned. Now, listen, I know also that probably our team on that day had the confidence of having gone to Holland and outplayed, give the Dutch a footballing lesson in that 2-2 draw in Amsterdam. So I know the different levels are there, but not for one moment will he be putting any fear into that squad about how good these Danes are on the ball, because I just don't think they are.
What's he like on match day, Gary, especially a big match day?
He's good. He's relaxed, Joe. He's relaxed because he knows he's done the work. For him, in stark contrast to Martin O'Neill, it's not about trying to motivate these players and these kind of massive speeches before. Why would you? Listen, who's going to motivate you when you're playing for Ireland? You've got a chance of fulfilling your dream. What is that manager actually going to say to you that would make a blind bit of difference? So ultimately, it's just reminders in terms of tactically what you're trying to achieve, what your role as an individual, what your role is within the collective. And because of the fact that they will be doing that on the training ground, I think they'll be going in with confidence. I think they'll realise that there has been a slight negativity that seeped in, as we mentioned earlier, because of the dual appointment and the strange nature of it. And also that the under-21s are doing great, which is great. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. But under-21 football and senior football, there's a lot of development still to go in that point.
Yeah, it's gonna. Like you mentioned earlier about the crowd, it's gonna be rocking. But as the longer the game goes on, you wonder how it's gonna be maintained. Like what's gonna happen to kind of keep teams going, because like in the last home game against Switzerland, they just, I know we were talking about kind of maybe the Danes might not be able to do what the Swiss did, but they did take control. And if like Glenn Whelan was talking about kind of coming out and starting with passion, but that is going to fade. They're going to have to play with their head, and again that goes back to what I was saying about McGoldrick and lads using him as their strength, because he might not score a goal in the game, but he could be the difference in terms of even just making others around them play better. You know what I mean? If the lads are like, let's say if it's Jeff Hendrick breaking forward or whatever, if they know that McGoldrick is on it, that's just going to lift fellas around them as well. And if things are coming back off him, or maybe he has an off night, that's just gonna seep in. And it's like, realistically, you're looking at it like if Denmark score, we're going to be really up against it. That's
the worry, isn't it? I mean, in terms of approach, like obviously a draw does Denmark, Gary, and you're into that tricky territory. If they score first, the air goes out of the thing a little bit. I mean, they'll have to throw kitchen sink then, and it depends, of course, when and if the Danes score. But I don't know. You can't just approach it and say, well, we'll try and sit in and keep it 0-0 until the last 15 minutes either.
Yeah. No, but if you think about our big results over the years under Martin O'Neill, it's been when we're chasing games.
Yeah.
You know, it suits our nature to throw caution to the wind and play with a little bit of devilment as such. I don't think we are good enough to sit in and dictate play and rely on our defensive units and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. People will say, well, listen, we're difficult to break down defensively under Martin. Yeah, we are, because we have 10 players on the edge of our 18-yard box. It's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
But listen, in terms of, I'll tell you what we won't do. There'll be no panic.
Yeah.
There'll be no panic. We won't be suddenly at half-time throwing tricky wingers into centre midfield like we did last time against them.
Well, that's actually the big thing, was in terms of in the 5-1, because all the other games have been tight and they've been cagey and it's been well matched. That 5-1 game is when at half-time kind of the teams at the bottom just fell over, because kind of Martin O'Neill did lose his head a little bit and kind of maybe chase things a bit too early, and that's what you're kind of hoping for. I don't think lads, as you mentioned earlier, in this day and age, like, I don't think you need a crunching Roy Keane tackle on Overmars straight away in the first few minutes to get the crowd going. I think the crowd would actually almost react a bit better, rather than kind of lads going 100 miles an hour. The team actually being composed, I think that would actually settle. Not that you want to settle the crowd down, but if Ireland start well and actually look comfortable in how they're playing, even if it is kind of balls into McGoldrick and feeding off him, that's what will kind of get the crowd going, more than lads going 100 miles an hour, James McLean smashing into someone for the throw-in. That's of no benefit in international football.
You can kind of a good passage of play and win a corner, and that's almost
that's
probably the biggest indication of that team in terms of thinking we're doing great because James is crashing into people, as opposed to like, listen, James, step into midfield, take the ball in a half turn and look after it. That will get a bigger cheer. But
because everyone would be shocked that happens. Like, you know what I mean?
But listen, I totally agree with you on McGoldrick, and I think ultimately it's a trust issue. I think the balls go into him, they trust him, and that's a massive thing as a teammate, that the balls go into him. You make willing runs then in behind, knowing that he's going to look after it. We can go back up, back and through, and maybe get people in. I think when you've got a centre forward, don't look after it, you start thinking, no, I'm not going to chance it. I better not try and get up there. And as a result, you never get on the front foot.
I was going to ask, that's actually a good point. I wonder, like, when you would have been playing, is there games when you go into, whether it was kind of a club or with Ireland, there's so much at stake, and those first few minutes where you realise actually the lads who we need are on it, that maybe brings out more in you, where you're going to look to the person beside you and say, yeah, this is going to happen, whereas, like...
Yeah, listen, it's difficult, isn't it? Because with the greatest respect, the squad that I played in is far superior to this. This is why it's incredible how well they've done it. They're potentially going to be the first team to automatic qualification if they win tomorrow. But, you know, when the whistle blows in those big games, whether it's away to Holland, away to Portugal, against the likes of Figo, those type of games, that whistle goes and it becomes normal practice, really. But ultimately, you're looking around in that scenario, and I'll tell you the big difference is because for 2 or 3 years leading into those big games, we started beating everyone, and we had matured. We had a real sense of what we were about, coupled with the fact that we had iconic players. You know, I mean, there's a lot of players from my team who probably make an all-time Ireland 11. There's very few of this team who would. So, you know, that's a big difference, and it's difficult to compare as such. But there's no doubt you look around at times, and I certainly did in those big games, and thinking, "Oh, look at my teammates. Yeah, I'll have some of this with these boys, no problem."
Gary, just a last quick one: is anyone edging McLean or Robinson out of their respective positions?
Well, in terms of Robbie Brady getting those minutes under his belt, the longer he stayed on against New Zealand, the more I was convinced he wouldn't start. So he's someone you probably would have looked at. I don't see it. I think Callum O'Dowd is still someone who has that ability to look after the ball, get us up the pitch. And the only frustration you have is that, as you mentioned, those guys, the likes of James McLean, probably the most, have not played particularly well.
No.
And they're very fortunate that there hasn't been anyone behind them who have took advantage of that. So I think they probably will get the nod. Mick will trust them for this one-off game. But there's no doubt they need to improve. The levels that they're playing at, and certainly looking after the ball, at times it's not international quality. It has to get better.
Well, listen, I'm sure we'll talk over the next couple of days. Gary, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure.
Cheers. I wasn't going to nag him for a prediction because we could just all let the heart rule the head here. Yeah. If you had to brutally give us your head assessment very quickly, prediction?
0-0.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll be a thriller as well. Good. Thanks very much for coming in. I'm sure you'll be there tomorrow night. David Sneyd in studio. Our football coverage brought to you thanks to Paddy Power. For information on responsible gambling, visit dunlewy.net.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.
Screen Time with John Farty.
Hang on, it's too early for that. But I do have to tell you that this week